warm welcome to ESGRisk.ai's first edition of the ESG India Leadership Awards. My name is Inga Lühr. I'm the strategy consultant at ESGRisk.ai. I will accompany you through today's award ceremony. I'm very happy to see so many having joined our virtual event. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. A quick background: ESGRisk.ai, an Aquatic Group company, is India's first ESG rating company and a pioneer in bringing ESG assessments to investors and corporates. We provide the ESG rating framework that assesses companies' performance along relevant ESG compliances in India, as well as global standards. The ESG assessment of over currently 500 listed Indian companies can be assessed via our ESG 360-degree subscription platform. Over the next 2.5 hours, we want to acknowledge and celebrate the efforts of companies that have integrated sustainability into their core business practices. We are joined by distinguished speakers that include policy experts, lenders, and private sector companies. A perfect blend to showcase the global and Indian ESG landscape and how it is shaped by different institutions, highlight ESG initiatives, illustrate relevance of ESG in capital markets by sharing concrete initiatives and contributions, as well as what lies ahead. Let us start the event now with a short welcome speech by Shankar Chakraborty, who is the CEO of Aquate Ratings and Research and Chairman of ESGRisk.ai. Shankar led Aquate's group transformation from being the world's first SME-focused credit rating agency to a technology and innovation-driven knowledge and opinion provider. Shankar has more than 2 decades of expertise in developing and offering data, analytics, risk management, and financial research solutions. Shankar, over to you.
Thank you, Inga. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the entire Aquate Group, I welcome all of you to the ESG India Leadership Awards ceremony. We are overjoyed to see such a huge interest as reflected through your participations. Presence of eminent personalities like Mr. UK Sinha, former Chairman SEBI, Mr. S.S. Mundra, former Deputy Governor RBI, Mr. Dinesh Khara, Chairman SBI, Mr. Sanjeev Koshek, Additional Secretary, Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, Ms. Aruna Newton, Head Diversity and Inclusion Infosys, and Mr. Felix Santheng from International Monetary Fund signify the seriousness with which ESG landscape is viewed in India. If human civilization must grow over the next millennium, uplift billions of people irrespective of race and gender out of poverty, ensure supply of energy and other natural resources to feed all the technological innovations that are to come without destroying our planet, and create incentives for businesses to ensure highest level of transparency and ethics, we need a new framework to channel funds in the right direction. If the last 300 years of industrialization has created a set of problems, now is the time to find solutions so that progress of humanity does not look like a flash in the pan. Worldwide, investors have started waking up to this fact as they recognize the risk of their investments rendered worthless due to climate events, problems created by an unequal society, and poorly governed businesses. As a result, more funds are flowing in the direction of ESG leaders than ever before. India has huge upside potential as major emerging market. India's current 7% of domestic AUM invested in ESG funds is expected to grow to 30% in a decade, as per our internal estimates. Clearly, this highlights the growing significance of environment, social, and governance factors in investment decisions. If there is one major economy that stands to lose heavily due to untamed ESG-related risks or gain from opportunities that the future ESG disruptions will throw up, it is India. A long coastline, large agriculture-dependent rural economy, huge population and inequality, and a long runway for sustained economic growth make us vulnerable, but at the same time, a hotbed for innovation and opportunities. For example, India's energy needs for sustained growth will pose a huge challenge. But if India can find an alternative energy resource from non-carbon sources, it will virtually secure centuries of prosperity. A major share of this future will be for the corporates to build, large or small, private or public. These corporates will need to secure funding to meet their goals, and the investors who believe in this future will have to find companies that have the intent and capability to deliver. Here lies the biggest challenge. ESG ratings provide a mutually acceptable, independent, unbiased, and objective framework to all stakeholders to measure relative performance of various companies within and across industries. ESG ratings aim to bring some discipline to an area that is struggling with lack of standardization and common benchmarks and quality data. The journey of ESGRisk.ai began in 2019 at one of the internal brainstorming sessions of Equity when we were discussing the recent credit failures that shook the Indian market. As we started discussing how the disruptive forces will play out in future, it became clear that we need to watch out for ESG related risks. But at that point in India, ESG was not a very known concept and few had any idea how to use the concepts in the real world. In fact, the few people we spoke to around that time, we only received discouragement. But we decided to go ahead and invest in this area as we felt making ESG frameworks accessible to Indian businesses and investors would be a worthwhile mission to pursue. After that, ESGRisk.ai was set up as a wholly owned but independent subsidiary of Equity Ratings and Research. Since then, we have developed rating criteria and methodologies, a very detailed taxonomy, an intelligent and electronic workflow. We collected data on listed Indian companies with 700 plus data points, and finally started publishing rating reports on 511 top Indian companies that are paid for by subscribers across banks and corporates. At the beginning of our journey, we met with people across all stakeholders, regulators, investors, and bankers who carried an impression that Indian corporates are not doing enough. This is hardly surprising, since as a human society, we pay more attention to controversies. But as we completed our analysis of 500 companies and dissected the data threadbare, it dawned upon us that there are great achievements that are worth talking about to inspire an entire generation of entrepreneurs and to learn from these experiences. This is why we have assembled here today to recognize corporate India's ESG stars. To begin today's proceedings, I invite our keynote speaker, Honorable Mr. U.K. Sinha, former Chairman SEBI. Mr. Sinha, during his tenure with SEBI, oversaw several reforms in the capital markets, including those related to mutual funds and corporate governance. He is credited with bringing significant improvements in the areas of trading and settlement systems, asset management industry, and shortening of IPO timelines. We are very fortunate to have him here and are keen to know his perspectives on ESG landscape in India. Over to you, Mr. Sinha.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you on the first ESG India Leadership Award. And I'm thankful to Shankar Chakravarti, MD of Equity Ratings, and also to some of my old colleagues and friends who are eminent person in their own right, Mr. S.S. Mudra and Mr. Arun Tiwari, with whom I had the occasion to work in the past, and both are in your board. It's a very important event today that we are launching the first ESG Leadership Award. I note that there are a total of 21 awards and 5 of them are principal awards. It's important for us to think and reflect that while the discussions globally and in India on sustainability, on environmental, social, and governance issues for corporations has been on the agenda for maybe over 3 decades, there have been significant developments in the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021. They are very, very important years for this movement to carry forward and get a leapfrog. I also cannot stop noting that this is the week when we are talking and we are meeting with you. This is the week when the Nobel Prize for Physics has gone to Professor Manabe on the issue of how to measure the climate changes and how to get into the roots of the climate changes. But interestingly, he has been given the Nobel Prize for a paper which he wrote in 1967. So that tells us that how things which have been moving in a certain directions for several decades, now the time has come for those things to be recognized globally and how it is important for all of us to take note of it. When I said that during 2020 and 2021, a number of significant developments have taken place. Let me bring you to the current year, 2021. This is a year when for the first time anywhere in the world, a judicial court in Netherlands has given an award against a very large company, that is the Royal Dutch Shell, saying that the plan that they have made for their own carbon footprint reduction is not good enough. And the interesting thing to note here is that it's a judicial court which has invoked the principles of human rights violations, and they have said that this is not something which we can allow, and they have imposed upon the company a requirement that they have to come out with more detailed and quicker action so far as their emission standards have to be reduced. I also want to emphasize that everybody, when this news came out first in May 21, everybody imagined and hoped that this is something which the court has perhaps gone out of its way, and the company is likely to go into appeal. But interestingly, the board of directors of the Royal Dutch Shell decided that they are not going for any appeal. They have accepted the extra demands on the company. And mind you, for a company which is in the business of hydrocarbon, implementation of this award involves 3% reduction in their gas emissions or carbon footprint emission every year. So in 10 years, they have to reduce it by 30%, but they have accepted this. So let us discuss what is driving all this. And in my view, there are 3 or 4 more important factors which are driving this movement. The first is the action by the governments, national governments, action by the regulators and the judicial courts. The second is the pull from the investor community. And the third is the development of technology and the progress towards measurement of reporting, measurement of emission, how much progress has been made there. I'll deal with all the 3 very shortly, one by one. Looking at the action taken by the governments and the regulators, you will find that long ago there were sustainable development goals, and many people in many parts of the world felt that this is something desirable, it should be done. but there were no direct action on the part of governments or the regulators that they have to be implemented in a particular manner and in a particular time frame. Now that is changing, and you will be happy to note that in countries after countries, and there are also various multilateral treaties and developments, that now there is more and more focus on the timeliness and on how to enforce it within a given time frame. The Dutch action, which I talked about, you will be surprised that the court has invoked not only human rights, but they have also said that this is something which is unlawful endangerment of the environment, and no company has a right to do that. So nobody could have imagined that a court of law would get into this and force a large corporation like Royal Dutch Shell, but this has happened. And the duty of care to the society has also been imposed by this order. Let me take you to Germany. In Germany, this year, again in 2021, the parliament has passed a law where use of coal has been, the time frame for reduction in emission through coal has been reduced drastically by a legislation. And the important thing to note is that the earlier target was fixed only 18 months ago. So within 18 months, the German parliament has decided that this has to be reduced further. The European Union and the European Commission are working very seriously towards coming out with some standards, and I'll talk about that. In a given time frame, countries after countries are giving their commitment. They're giving out their commitment on what their country is going to do. Let me mention about the United Kingdom, for example. In United Kingdom, the Prime Minister has announced that by 2030, all the households will be heated. So the heating for the households will take place through offshore wind energy and not through coal energy or any other hydrocarbon energy. This is a significant development. So countries after countries are doing it. Australia is thinking on those lines. Even India and China have announced their commitment that within a certain time frame they want to be net zero. So this is an idea whose time has come. Whether a paper was published in 1967 and the world recognizes and gives a Nobel Prize for it in 2021, or the SDG was framed 3 decades back, but then now everybody is talking about its timely implementation. The first point I would like to make that countries after countries, they are realizing, and there are reasons for it, lot of extreme events, even the pandemic, all that is showing very, very clearly that the waiting period is over. People and the countries and societies have to work in this. So a business corporation, in whichever part of the world they are, they have to take note of it. The second thing and second factor which I would like to emphasize in this direction is the pull. One was the push from the regulators and government. The second is the pull from the investor community. In countries after countries, in corporations after corporations, in their annual general meeting, some very, very strong demands are being raised. Again, to give you one example, in case of ExxonMobil in the United States, again in 2021, one investor which owns 0.02% in the company was able to mobilize enough votes to get a majority to reject 3 of the directors which had been proposed by the management. And they got 3 of their own directors appointed or recommended by them, and they were appointed. And the whole rationale was that according to the resolution moved by this activist shareholder, the names proposed by the management were not of people who had knowledge or who had shown commitments towards sustainability goals. So the whole argument was that these people are not knowledgeable. They have shown no commitment and they cannot be renominated, or even if it was a fresh case in one case, they don't invite faith that they will be meeting the requirements of sustainability for the corporation. And these names were rejected. People were crestfallen. Who could have imagined that such a thing will happen even 6 months prior to that? That if somebody who has 0.02% in the company will get support from the likes of BlackRock, from the likes of Vanguard, and they will be able to get their own resolution passed and the management resolutions defeated. And there are various factors behind it. Let me just mention one or two of them. The profile of investors globally is changing very fast. There are data to support that more and more investable money is in the hands of people who are in their 20s and definitely in their 30s. So that is happening in a big way. And you will also find that the millennials who are having investable surplus with them, they have a certain value system. They care for their own 30, 40, 50 years of life that they are left with, and they don't want to suffer, and they want to have their voices met. In 2019, Fidelity conducted a survey, and there were some revealing findings in that survey. 87% of the millennials indicated that they wanted to work in those companies which are scoring high on ESG parameters. 85% of them said that they would prefer to buy products made by companies which rank very high on ESG parameters. And 43% of them said that they want to invest in those companies which are scoring high on ESG parameters. For baby boomer generation, this percentage was 12%. So 43% versus 12%. So more and more money is coming into the hands of people who seriously worry about their environment. Not only that, the asset managers, whether you are a pension fund manager or you are an insurance company, the asset managers are under pressure from their own constituents about their own investment decisions. If, for example, there is a company which has created havocs with the tailings dam of the company failing and killing people, hundreds of people, or if you have invested in a company where the remains of aborigines are being disturbed to extract some extra tonnage of coal, the constituents of the pension funds or the constituents of the insurance companies or even mutual funds are not going to allow that. So there is now pressure on the asset managers from their own constituents. And that is leading to a situation where they have to be active, they have to force the corporations to start thinking seriously about it. In fact, almost all the big asset managers are under pressure to develop their own policy. Not only develop the policy, but also to report periodically about how they have been doing on it, what actions they have taken. And imagine that it's not that what they are saying is being accepted. They are being questioned. They are being questioned by analysts. They are being questioned by proxy advisors. And people are now reacting to what is called greenwashing, that whether it's a company or whether it is a large investor, if they say they have been investing as per ESG parameters, are they actually doing it or not? They are being questioned about it. The next thing I would like to say is that while we were talking about sustainability, we are talking about ESG, one important question was, how do we measure it? What is the yardstick? Company A versus company B, what is the comparability? And that has been a serious debate. And let me remind you, this debate was there also when for the first time globally, and starting with the US SEC, there was a requirement that the financial reporting should be in a manner which is a standard, which is comparable, which is something which can be assessed and appraised. That took decades. Similarly, on ESG measurement, there have been serious developments, but there have been serious differences as well. And it has taken its own time. When the idea of sustainable investment started getting ground, I'm talking of 1990s onwards, a cocktail of acronyms developed across the world. Agencies came up, organizations came up. We had CBP, we had PRI, we had GRI, we had TCFD, we had IMP, we had IIRC, we had SASP, and a whole lot of others. I am mentioning only a few of them. And it was discovered that all of them were working at cross purposes. Some were having their own ideas about what should be the focus, some were having something different. And in this situation, corporations not willing to subject themselves to the discipline of ESG were getting away. Last 2 years, 2020 and 21, there has been serious development about how to combine all these efforts and create a consensus so that in future, there is at least a comparable and a standard reporting system in the whole world. In 2020, the International Integrated Reporting Council, IIRC, and Sustainable Accounting Standard Boards, SASB, decided to merge. And this was a major development. Both the agencies had tremendous problem in the past, but I am happy to note that this year, 2021, they have got formally merged. SASB and IIRC have merged formally, and they have created what is called the Value Reporting Foundation, VRF. And now we are in the next stage of this consolidation. VRF, Value Reporting Foundation, and the IFRS Foundation, they are working together to create what is called SASB, Sustainable Accounting Standards Board. And let me remind you that SASB has already got 77 industry standards. They have already published 70 standards. And now the ISSB is likely to be created. In fact, the hope is that before the summit in Glasgow in early November, before that, there might be, if we are all lucky, there might be a big announcement. What this will lead to is that a company in any other part of the world or registered in any other part of the world and having operations in other countries will have to follow the discipline of reporting in a particular format that is comparable with other companies in other parts of the world. The major issue in financial reporting for a long period has been comparability. And so far as sustainability reporting is concerned, again, this has been the main issue so far. So I'm optimistic that this confluence of various factors, these factors will bring together very soon, not in a distant future, a situation where it will be difficult for corporations to avoid implementation of the standards which are demanded. Parallel to this, there is another development which I must mention here, that the International Organization of Security Commissions, like the US SEC, which is the Security Commission for the USA, we have an international organization, IOSCO. IOSCO has been working very seriously in this direction. And in the European Union, EFRAG has come out with its standards, which may be binding for the European companies. There is a strong possibility that US SEC is likely to announce its own standards. I must remind my viewers that in India, the SEBI, Security and Exchange Board of India, had come out with a reporting standard called BRR, Business Responsibility Reporting, started in 2012. This year, again in 2021. So mind you, 2021 is really, really important. SEBI has come out with what is called BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Standards, Sustainability Reporting Standards. And they are being made mandatory for top 1,000 companies. If some of you care to go through the BRSR, you will discover that it is very detailed, it is quantitative, it is comparable, what type of scope 1, scope 2 or scope 3 emissions are being done, what type of effluent discharge is taking place, what type of solid waste disposal is taking place, what type of social factors you are following, what type of whether bonded labor is being employed or not, not only in the company but also in the supply chain. All those things will have to be reported in a quantifiable manner. And the moment it is done, imagine it will be very easy for any analyst, any rating agency, any proxy firm to compare company A from company B. And when that happens, you can imagine how much pressure will be built up on the companies who were claiming wrongly so far that they are doing all the right things and clicking all the right buttons so far as sustainability is concerned. But I must also add that this part, the measurement part, is a difficult part. It's not very easy. We are making a lot of progress. And here I want to mention about technology. Technology is helping in a big way. Recently, about a week ago, I went to see an aluminum plant in India, and I was told, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, that on a real-time basis, whatever are the measurements on emission standards, and there were 10 or 12 parameters, they are being fed simultaneously on real-time basis with the pollution control authorities. It's not a question of the company recording something today and reporting to them after a lag of 1 hour or 1 day or 1 month. It is being recorded there. And now we are also moving away from what is being reported to what is that can be measured. I give you the example of measurement from the company going directly to the pollution control authorities. There is now technology available that on a remote basis, those who are interested, they can measure these parameters without depending upon the company to make any reporting of it. So measurement is going to be very, very stiff. And it is in this context that I'm particularly pleased that Acquit Ratings has come out with this attempt to do ESG Leadership Award. It's a step in the right direction. It's very timely initiative. They have 21 awards today and 5 are in the premier category. But more importantly, as things emerge, Acquit Ratings is a very dynamic organization. I'm sure they will also be making modifications as we move along, as reporting standards improve, as companies start putting a lot of data in public domain. This will also be further modified as we move along. But as an initiative to have the first ESG India Leadership Award, I must compliment the company, Acquit Ratings, and its senior management and the board. And I'm very thankful for them to invite me for this interaction with all of you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sinha, I'm sure the audience found your examples highlighting the relevance of ESG as interesting as me. May I request you to kindly stay back and give us the honor to release the ESG Yearbook 2021 India Landscape.
I'm delighted to launch the ESG Yearbook 2021 presented by ESGRisk.ai. The compendium provides a detailed insight into the ESG landscape of India and also captures the leaders and laggards with respect to the ESG best practices. I'm certain you will find the compendium insightful too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for launching the ESG Yearbook. For those interested, the compendium can be downloaded from our website as well as the event platform post the event. Let me pass the floor to Mr. S.S. Mundra, who is a former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India and former Chairman and Managing Director of Bank of Baroda, the second largest bank in the country. Mr. Mundra is a strong proponent of sustainability. May I please invite you, sir, to illustrate how institutions shape the ESG landscape?
Thank you, Inga. Dear Sri Sinha, my fellow speakers, ESGRisk.ai team, delegates and participants to this conference, is my pleasure to address this August gathering. You must have all seen that yesterday, this year's Nobel Prize is awarded to a trio of scientists for their studies on the role of humanity in climate change. And their forecast models reveal a dire outlook if rise in temperature is not arrested. In a sense, is a wake-up call for the humanity. And that is why I think against this backdrop, our today's deliberations in this conference become even more topical and relevant. Sri Sinha has already given us a great overview. I would like to start my talk with two contrasting studies from the global automotive industry. The first one is the story of Volkswagen emission scandal, which broke out in the year 2015. So as you know, Volkswagen had set a goal to become the world's largest automaker by the year 2018. And to achieve the goal, the company had to succeed in the US market while meeting increasingly stringent emissions regulations and competing with fuel-efficient hybrids. Volkswagen deliberately installed software that enabled its diesel cars to pass US emission tests while actually emitting up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxide. The emissions testing process also had a lacunae. Tests were conducted in the laboratory, not on the road, enabling the onboard computer to detect the testing environment. This enabled Volkswagen employees to write a defeat device into their software code to make lab results appear cleaner than Volkswagen vehicles' actual performance. The cheat itself was hard to detect because it was embedded in millions of lines of code. It was discovered by independent researchers from West Virginia University working with the International Council on Clean Transportation. The 5-person team working at University Center Clean Transportation Center for Alternative Fuel, Engines and Emissions determined that Volkswagen was cheating on laboratory tests after it evaluated 3 diesel cars under the real-world driving conditions. While the scandal itself brought to fore the inadequate governance mechanism at the company, the consequence of poor governance spilled over to environment, polluting vehicles that went unchecked, and social, loss of jobs and investor wealth, including pension fund that lost their money. So, in a sense, it touched all the three aspects which we are discussing today, E, S, and G. Now what had been the consequence for the company? Over the course of the first 2 months following the scandal, the company lost 46% of its value. The company faced recall cost for 11 million vehicles globally. Last year, while the broad market index was up 68%, the Volkswagen stocks was still 35% below its pre-scandal level. So that is one side of it. Now the other contrasting story, and this is the story of Tesla. Now, over the years, EV maker, Tesla has evolved into a dynamic technology innovator. Tesla is the market leader in battery-powered EV cells in the US, owning around 60% of market share. The company's flagship Model 3 accounts for about half of the US EV market. Tesla has adopted the highly aspirational goal of decarbonizing mobility, and to deliver on this goal, the company has not only developed cars like Model 3, which with an electric powertrain, but also developed charging stations across the US, developed battery technologies to support its cars with long range, and made inroad into solar and energy storage businesses. Now, Tesla's business model and its ability to deliver on its stated goal has caught the imagination of investors. Tesla commands a market share of 16% in the global EV market. EVs account for a meager 2.5% share of overall passenger car sales worldwide. Tesla's market capitalization reached US $777 billion in October 2021, nearly 8 times its market cap of March 2020, which was at $96 billion. In comparison, Toyota, with such a long vintage, is still relying on conventional passenger cars, has a market capitalization of US $248 billion in October 2021. Now, these two contrasting stories sum up how ESG factors have started being seen as important criteria for investors over the last 5 to 6 years. And these are not the only such instances. There are several such examples across various industries, including back at home. The impact of ESG factors on the equity returns is not limited only to the US or developed markets. The stock returns of highest performing companies on ESG parameters, that is the ESG top 50 rated by ESGRisk.ai, consistently beat the Nifty 50 index return over 1 year and 3 year period horizon, while the farmer delivered 75% and 92%, the latter returned 59% and 60% respectively for this period. Looking at ESG factors only as drivers of stock price performance will undermine how they can influence the fundamentals of a company. While equity investors will look for opportunities in ESG framework, lenders will have to watch out for ESG events and controversies which could impact their credit portfolio, be saddled with stranded assets and elevated risk of default. ESG factors can also contribute in identifying credit that are of better quality in terms of lower risk or enable more sustainable future business prospects. This is particularly true for climate-related or environment-related risks. The Global Risk Report 2021 of the World Economic Forum has identified extreme weather events and environmental damage caused by humans as one of the top risks, as further corroborated by the Nobel winners, as I mentioned in the beginning of my speech. The Financial Stability Board is an international body of G20 nations that monitors and make recommendations about the global financial system. FSB and G20 has committed to develop supervisory framework for finance companies to mitigate ESG risks and climate risks in particular. India being part of G20 and RBI as a participant in FSB, it would be reasonable to expect that ultimately FSB's initiatives will lead to Indian banking assets to be risk-based in line with environment risk, and correspondingly pricing of loan will build in cost of such risk. The FSB reported in 2020 that climate-related risk, that is physical and transition risk, may alter asset price valuation and amplify credit, liquidity, and counterparty risk. Climate-related risks may thus affect the stability, or so to say resilience, of financial markets across jurisdictions. Consequently, the need for an appropriate framework to identify, assess, and manage climate-related risks has become an imperative. Recently, RBI set up a sustainable finance group within the Department of Regulation to strengthen its efforts and regulatory initiatives in the areas of sustainable finance and climate risk. The group will advise systemically important financial services entities to have a strategy to address climate change risk and appropriate governance structures to effectively manage climate risks and develop forward-looking tools for climate scenario analysis and stress testing. While the need for de-risking future assets from environment risk is now well understood, the modalities for raising capital for this purpose is still evolving. Green bond, a type of fixed income instrument, can mobilize resources from domestic and international capital markets for climate change adaptation, renewables, and other environment-friendly projects. These bonds are typically asset-linked and backed by the issuing entity's balance sheet. So they usually carry the same credit rating as their issuers' other debt obligations. Green bonds may come up with tax incentives to enhance their attractiveness to investors. Interest in green bond and green finance is progressively gaining momentum as it has become a priority for many issuers, asset managers, and governments alike. So what are the opportunities for green bond market growth? The key determinants of the potential for green bond market include A, sustainable finance policies and framework, B, green bond issuance momentum, C, capital market development, and D, governance and political stability. Among emerging markets, India has the second largest volume of outstanding green bonds at $10.8 billion and has consistently been the second largest issuer after China. In 2020, however, India's green bond issuance dropped significantly to just $916 million from $3.2 billion in the year 2019. To meet its ambitious target, India's renewable energy capacity has been advancing, and bond issuance can meet capital requirement for some of the larger scale projects. Thus, in 2021, that is the current year, India is all set to regain its position in issuances. As far as global bond market issuance are concerned, it is estimated that volumes are likely to reach around 450 billion this year, and that there is high possibility of issuance surpassing even $1 trillion figure by the year 2023. Whether it is expansion of green bond market, stress testing models for loan books, or incentivizing sustainable businesses, the major impediments to success could be like this. 1. Quality and availability of information. 2. Lack of awareness and know-how about the ESG framework. And 3. Lack of standardization. I would like to compliment ESGRisk.ai in taking up a mission that aims to remove these impediments. With growing interest in ESG criteria, investors need a way to objectively assess the ESG performance of a company. This has led to the flourishing of a number of ESG rating agencies in North American and European markets. However, these global agencies primarily service the large equity investors in US and Europe, and thus cover only limited number of Indian companies. ESGRisk, on the other hand, aims to bring India-specific rating models and taxonomy and provide rating reports on a wide cross-section of Indian corporates. These ESG ratings are designed to help investors identify and understand financially material ESG risks. Companies are evaluated based on publicly available information with scores given for each material E, S, and G topic, alongside an overall scope. ESGRisk also calculates a transparency score to indicate the degree of disclosures given the requirement under BRR guidelines. Companies that score well on ESG metrics are believed to better anticipate future risks and opportunities as well, be more disposed to longer-term strategic thinking, and focused on long-term value creation. With investors using ESG scores in their investment strategies, the consequences of a poor rating can be significant. It can impact the stock prices of the company, or banks can deny the company cheaper loans or the loans altogether even. Therefore, understanding your ESG scores and improving year on year is important for your company to continue to attract investment. I strongly believe ESGRisk work will not just pave the way for Indian banks to align their credit policies to ESG goals or help corporates to measure their own performance on sustainability front, but also drive adoption of ESG criteria by the mutual funds. Despite being world's 6th largest economy, India has just 23 ESG funds compared to the United States and Britain, both with more than 500 each, while Japan has 182 such funds and China has 119. Other economies in the top 10 also have more ESG funds. These ESG funds in India together has an asset base of just about rupees 9,900 crores at the end of March 2021, which is a fraction of overall AUM. Clearly, availability of data and rating can change this scenario significantly and pave the way to empower investors with better tools. Sustainable investing assets in major global markets grew at a CAGR of 7.3% to reach to $35.3 trillion at the start of 2020, beating the CAGR of 3.5% for professionally managed assets over the past 2 years. The Global Sustainable Investment Alliance, GSIA, said in its 5th biennial report, GSIR 2020. This award ceremony could create the much needed awareness about ESG issues and best practices. I would like to congratulate all the winners for adopting a more progressive vision and ESGRisk.ai for successfully organizing the event. I wish a very meaningful deliberation during the course of the day and very important takeaway for all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mundra, for so beautifully highlighting that in an ever-evolving ESG landscape, there is a need for adequately designed ESG assessments and how they are a suitable tool to inform regulators and investors and corporates. I now would like to open the award ceremony to acknowledge and celebrate India's ESG leaders. Before we announce the winners of the 16 different award categories in the environment, social, and governance space, I would like to invite first Mr. Ramnath Iyer, Chairman of ESGRisk.ai's Independent Award Committee, to shortly explain how we assessed and selected the awardees.
Good afternoon, friends, and thank you so much for joining ESGRisk.ai's award ceremony. Today, we will recognize 21 areas of ESG leadership, and in the next 5 minutes, I will provide an overview of the evaluation framework used to identify the ESG leaders. As we know, corporate India has been recognizing their social and environmental impact, has taken numerous initiatives to mitigate or manage ESG risks. ESG India Leadership Award is an initiative of ESGRisk.ai to celebrate achievements in ESG risk management. To identify award recipients, ESGRisk.ai employed a rigorous evaluation framework, and to eliminate all bias, identified and appointed an independent jury, which was tasked to recommend award categories and develop the award framework using which the winners would be identified. To qualify as a jury member, experts could not be affiliated with any of the corporates being evaluated, had to have ESG expertise, and needed an understanding of best sustainability practices across the globe. I am very privileged to be chairperson of the award committee and participate in the first ever award recognizing corporate excellence in ESG. The jury members met numerous times over a period of 4 weeks to finalize the methodology and identify winners in each award category. The jury members agreed to use 4 sequential steps to identify the winners. In step 1, the jury identified material ESG issues for each sector, and based on these material risk issues, identified the award categories that would be recognized. Only companies exposed to specific risk would be considered for the award. For example, data privacy and security is not a material risk in the manufacturing sector, and hence only companies in the service sector were considered for this award category. The jury, during internal discussion, recognized that a few companies may be leaders in managing multiple ESG risks and recommended category specific and overall leadership awards. The jury members also opined that an award recognizing ESG transparency will encourage disclosures, and this was accepted and instituted by ESGRisk.ai. In step 2, the jury identified the list of companies eligible for each award from the universe of 500 listed companies selected by market capitalization. In this step, the jury did not know how any company fared on their ESG risk management. The company's performance was to be evaluated only after they made the shortlist for a category. In step 3, the ESG risk management capability of each company in the shortlist was evaluated using ESGRisk.ai's assessment framework, which considers risk management strategy, ESG initiatives and targets used by the company to track their performance, and the performance against the internally identified targets. Leaders in each category were identified based on their scores. In the final step, the leaders were screened by the jury for controversies or negative news that can belie their performance in an award category. The final list of award winners were then compiled by the jury and presented to ESGRisk.ai's management. The management of ESGRisk.ai also learned about the winners only from the jury. None of the jury members were paid by ESGRisk.ai or in any manner influenced by the companies evaluated for the awards. The awardees did not have to nominate themselves or pay a fee to be considered for the awards. In summary, I'm happy to say that ESGRisk.ai's awards are not only fair, independent, and unbiased, but also ascertained using a rigorous methodology applied transparently by a committee of industry experts. The entire jury and my congratulations to the winners for their exemplary ESG practices.
Thank you, Ramnath. One small organizational announcement. I encourage you, the audience, to explore and make use of the virtual platform. Please post and congratulate our winners on the message board, as well as visit the photo booth to click your pictures and share them on social media. Please use hashtag ESG India Leadership Award 2021. Let us now start the long-awaited announcement of the award winners, beginning with the environment category. Greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint reduction are among the top priorities of most industries. Having initiatives and targets for reducing GHG emissions and disclosing their environmental impact is critical. The award for mitigating GHG emissions goes to Hindustan Zinc Limited. Hindustan Zinc has reduced Scope 1 GHG emissions by 2.87%. It is among the few companies to undertake science-based targets to reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2 GHG emissions by 2026. And the company has registered 12 of its projects under the Clean Development Mechanism. We congratulate Hindustan Zinc Limited for its outstanding performance in reducing its carbon footprint. For our next award, sustainability across the complete supply chain is key. It requires sourcing products from environmentally responsible suppliers and monitoring and reducing environmental impact at every stage. The award for green supply chain goes to Page Industry Limited. Page Industry maintains a comprehensive sustainable assessment program covering 100% of its domestic suppliers. Approximately 78% of their supply chain are worldwide responsible accredited production certified. Additionally, the company plans to integrate 100% sustainability elements into each of its contracts and code of conduct. A big round of applause for Page Industries Limited for its outstanding performance in sourcing products from environmentally responsible suppliers and ensuring ethical supply chains. Companies are responsible for the waste they generate. A waste management system includes the disclosure of several types of waste generated through their operations, initiatives for managing its reducing waste generation. The award of effective waste management goes to Vedanta Limited. Vedanta has recycled 88% of the waste it generated during operations last year. They have also been able to recycle 100% of the generated fly ash over the past 2 years. As part of the company's waste management process, waste management technical standards are being followed, and the company has developed waste to health projects to help minimize its waste stream. Let us put our hands together to acknowledge Vedanta's outstanding practices in waste reduction and initiatives towards its proposal. Reducing recycling and reusing water is central to ensuring water efficiency. For a range of industries, it is significant to have certified water efficiency management systems and to disclose the withdrawal and consumption of water during different processes. For today's award for water efficiency, we would like to announce ACC Limited to be the winner in this category. ACC Limited stands out for its commitment in ensuring water efficiency and targets to become 5 times water positive by 2030. Every of their manufacturing plant treats and recycles water, and a total of 17.3 is being reused. Moreover, the company also reduces its water consumption in cement operations by 7%. Congratulations to ACC Limited for actively and successfully working towards water efficiency. Increasing the number of industries places a high priority on reducing air pollutant emissions. Having well-defined initiatives and targets and disclosing environmental impact is a first step to make meaningful contributions. And the award for mitigating air pollutant emissions goes to NTPC Limited. NTPC's coal-fired stations are equipped with high-efficiency electrostatic precipitators to ensure that particulate matter emissions are kept below the permissible limits. All stations in the National Capital Region, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, have been switched to low-sulfur alternative fuel to reduce SOx emissions. Moreover, the company uses ambient air quality monitoring stations and continuous emission monitoring systems in all its stations. Let us put our hands together to celebrate NTPC's outstanding performance in mitigating air pollutant emissions. In the interest of the public well-being, regulators and consumers increasingly demand businesses to offer green products and services. Ensuring initiatives to introduce, develop, and market green products and services is becoming crucial. The award for Green Product and Services goes to Brigade Enterprise Limited. Over the last years, Brigade Enterprise has shifted its focus towards developing a portfolio of green buildings across the company. It ensures the adoption of green building norms in all their projects. A big round of applause for Brigade Enterprise Limited for taking excellent initiatives in building green and energy efficient real estate portfolios. Effective energy management is a way to reduce overall energy consumption. Using renewable energy in operations, having certified energy management systems, and disclosing energy consumption are key to establish an effective energy management system. Today's award for energy efficiency goes to Ultratech Cement Limited. The company is one of the very few Indian companies that have signed up for the global EP100 initiative, committing to improve their energy productivity. They have reached 60% of its target of doubling energy productivity by 2034-35. Moreover, Ultratech Cement successfully increased its consumption of renewable energy and aims to meet 25% of its electricity requirements through a combination of renewable energy and waste heat recovery systems by 2021. Let us celebrate Ultratech Cement Limited in actively and successfully working towards energy efficiency. Biodiversity is key to our planet's health, and directly impacts all our lives. Initiatives to protect, restore, and reduce the impact on biodiversity and strategies for rehabilitation and resettlement programs are increasingly being integrated into corporate strategies. Our last award for the environment category is that of reducing biodiversity impact, and it goes to Reliance Industries Limited. RIL continuously monitors the impact of its operations on the surrounding ecosystem through periodic environment impact studies conducted by external experts. To preserve ecosystems, the company planted approximately 2.2 crore saplings, enhancing the development of green belts and restoring habitats. Let us put our hands together for Reliance Industries Limited in its excellent practices in protecting, restoring, and reducing the impact on the country's biodiversity. Moving to the social category. Diversity and inclusion to ensure equal opportunities for all, regardless of age, gender, race, sexual orientation, disability, qualifications, nationality, or ethnicity, has been a global demand. The award acknowledging leadership in equal opportunities goes to Infosys Limited. Infosys distinguishes itself by keeping diversity and inclusion at the heart of its operations. 144 nationalities are represented in the company's workforce, and 38% of its employees are women. Their participation has been boosted through various company initiatives, such as Women in Technology and Restart Her. The company regularly organizes awareness programs and events aimed at fostering the inclusion of the LGBTQI and disabled community. As part of this effort, Infosys Australia is also certified by the Australian Network on Disabilities as a disability confident recruiter. I'm glad to be joined by Mrs. Aruna Newton, who is the Associate Vice President and Head Diversity and Inclusion in the Sustainability, Governance and Reporting at Infosys Limited. Aruna has over 32 years of experience in sales and marketing, quality processes, systems, and leadership development. She is a credible voice in diversity consulting. Aruna, may I invite you to say a few words what steps Infosys has taken and what corporates in India can learn.
Hello. I'd like to start by saying thank you very much for the recognition Infosys has received from the ESGRisk.ai Awards. Infosys as an organization has always believed in fostering an inclusive workplace. What we have done at Infosys is we've baked our stand on diversity, equity, and inclusion into the Infosys Code of Conduct and Ethics. And it's captured in an important tenet of the code, respecting each other. Clearly, we're committed to providing a non-discriminatory workforce or a workplace for all candidates. Now, let me give you a brief on some of the work that we've done in the space of diversity and inclusion. Needless to say, one of the biggest call-outs is our focus on the integration of women in the workplace and their growth and development. The Infosys ESG Vision 2030 has actually called out an ambition for Infosys in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are committed to ensuring 45% women in the workforce and 25% women in the executive leadership. You probably already know that the non-executive leadership already has a huge representation of women at the board level. Infosys championed the Maternity Amendment Act in India, and I'm really happy to say as a result of that, we've seen a huge positive for women coming back to work after maternity, not just for Infosys, but for the entire nation. I think in many ways, this opens up a huge talent pool. But it's not just important to invite women back after a 6-month maternity break. What we've done, of course, is we've set up what we call physical infrastructure in each of our campuses. We call it the Mums Net. The Mums Net is a physical space containing workstations, interaction spaces, and lactation rooms. And women coming back to work after maternity work in what we call this little safe space till they're ready to come back and join their project teams. The support around competency development has enhanced their confidence. And I'm proud to say that Infosys women come back to their core area of work. That's something that's really special. Of course, we also have a program that we call Restart with Infosys, focused on women who've taken a break. We don't judge for any reason and for any duration. These women come back into what I'd call a kind of apprenticeship program, just to suggest that it's supported, women are mentored, and of course, I think once you get women into that particular space and once their confidence builds up, there's no stopping them. In the same way, we are focused on strengthening the participation of women in technology and women in the leadership of the organization. We've introduced a program for women in leadership to build the leadership pipeline. It's called I'm the Future. I'm also really proud of a partnership that we have with NASSCOM, and we've committed through something called the Women Wizards Rule Technology Program. It's called W2RT. We've committed to train 10,000 women in the new and emerging technologies. We've seen a huge uptick in the participation and growth of women thanks to this focused effort. Infosys has also been a champion of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, and we have a huge focus in building a workplace that's inclusive of persons with disabilities. We've made huge investments to ensure that our campuses, not just buildings, are accessible to people with disabilities. So across India, you will see well-appointed campuses that allow for the inclusion of people with disability. But accommodation is just one dimension. We're committed to also support the aspiration of people with disability. And today, we've set up what we call the Accessibility Lab, with all the world moving towards technology. The Accessibility Lab is a virtual space which consists of a lot of learning, access to experts, simulations, with the intention of strengthening the competency of Infosians in building accessible solutions. I'm really proud of that because, that's kind of like building a massive cultural change, which is a force multiplier. We're also signatories to the United Nations LGBTQ non-discrimination charter. And there's a huge focus on building awareness, strengthening the participation and inclusion of members of this community through medical insurance, through gender-neutral washrooms, through infrastructure, through facilities, but importantly, through conversations, through mentoring. We drive all of this through employee resource groups, which are voluntary groups of employees that actually inform our diversity and inclusion practices. I'm proud to say that the ERGs are very engaged in helping us build these micro cultures that foster inclusion for every employee. Today, the world, guess what? The world has always been diverse, but I think we're opening up our minds and our hearts to the fact that there's a lot more than we actually bargained for. And that's good. It's good that there is so much of difference because I think it builds creativity, it fosters innovation, and importantly, the participation of everyone. At Infosys, we're committed to ensuring everybody brings their best selves to work.
Thank you, Aruna. It is inspiring to hear how you and your team have continuously and relentlessly worked towards ensuring equal opportunities in the workplace. One round of applause, please. Coming to our next award. A company that practices community support and development is aware of their impact on all facets of society, including economic, social, and environmental impacts. The award for community support and development goes to Gujarat Pipavav Port Limited. GPPL has spent a total of rupees 67.3 million on CSR activities to support and develop communities of more than 200 villages. The company engages in providing educational equipment, teaching, upgrading school infrastructure, providing medical assistance to the surrounding villages, improving health and nutritional status of children, adolescent and mothers, entrepreneurship training, financial inclusion, and socio-economic development. Let us use this opportunity to recognize Gujarat Pipavav Port Limited for its excellent practices in community engagement and their overall economic and social development. To control the flow of information and safeguard consumer privacy, sensitive data needs to be managed properly. Data privacy and security programs involve cybersecurity policies and practices, setting up information security management systems, and conducting data security audits. The award for ensuring data privacy and security goes to Vakrangi Limited. As part of Vakrangi security efforts, Vakrangi has implemented the mandatory access control, which limits the access of each user to a set of tasks and timeframes, employs digital signatures using asymmetric encryption, includes regular audits, data tagging, and timestamps to trace unauthorized activity, uses monitoring logs on a real-time basis to identify anomalies and misuses and abnormalities, and makes use of advanced encryption technology and anti-scamming card reader technology. Let us acknowledge Vakrangi Limited for putting in place and ensuring excellent practices in data protection and data security audits. Employment quality directly links to quality of life and provides the opportunity for social and economic advancements. Initiatives to enhance employment quality include strategies towards fair compensation, flexible work schedules, parental leave, bereavement leave, and sabbaticals to make sure that the workforce is satisfied. The award for the employment quality goes to Tata Consultancy Services Limited. TCS employee turnover is less than 15%. All employees are entitled to parental leave. In the assessment year, over 8,000 employees used their parental leave, and 97 of those rejoined TCS thereafter. The company ensures that the remuneration is the same for full-time male and female employees across the same grade, role, and location. Congratulations to Tata Consultancy Services Limited for its excellent initiative towards fair compensation, flexible work schedules, and enabling a favorable work culture. Product quality is at the heart of ensuring customer satisfaction and loyalty and long-term business growth. The assessment of product quality includes a company's initiatives towards quality management systems, communication of product defects, product recall, and measuring customer satisfaction and retention rate. The award for product quality goes to Bajaj Electricals Limited. Bajaj Electricals has a policy on maintaining the quality of its products and an ISO 9000 certified internal quality management system. The company's consumer care portal ensures the addressal of consumer grievances and serves as a platform for assisting their clients to fix their appliances at home. A round of applause for Bajaj Electricals for its leadership in product quality. Developing an employee skill enhances the performance of the overall company. Employee development, today's last award in the social category, recognizes practices in the overall development of employees through training, reskilling, and upskilling opportunities. The award for the employee development goes to HDFC Limited. The bank has provided training to 7.7 man days per employee during the assessment year. It sponsors skill development and leadership development programs. Moreover, HDFC introduced an e-learning platform, HDFC Inspire, for increasing product and service knowledge of bank offerings. Let us applaud HDFC, the Housing Development Finance Corporation Limited, for its outstanding performance in employment development. In our last category of today's award ceremony, governance, we are happy to announce two leaders. Board diversity positively influences a company's decision-making processes, effective risk management, and stakeholder alignment. A diverse board includes members with different ethnic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, nationalities, and cultural backgrounds. The winner of today's Board Diversity Award is Blue Star Limited. The company at 2013 requires the appointment of one female director. Blue Star stands out among its competitors by having 20% women in its board of directors. The company also puts a clear focus on promoting equal gender representation within its management and leadership. As part of this, Blue Star regularly conducts training sessions for aspiring female candidates for senior management positions. A big round of applause for Blue Star Limited leadership in board diversity. An independent board increases corporate credibility, while governance standards functions make the company more transparent. Complying with disclosure requirements and independent member requirements is crucial in ensuring good governance. Today's award for board independence goes to Mindtree Limited. It is governed by a board comprising 55% independent directors. Let us put our hands together to celebrate Mindtree's leadership in board independence. Before we announce the final set of awards and the overall ESG leader, I would first like to invite our eminent speakers to, through the lenders, global and policy lens, elaborate on the rising importance of ESG in the capital market. One of the visionaries of India's banking industry is Mr. Dinesh Kara, the chairman of the State Bank of India. He boasts more than 30 years of experience in many aspects of commercial banking, such as SME credit, corporate credit, retail credit, international banking operations, and deposit mobilization. Mr. Dinesh Kara, may I invite you to provide us with a lender's perspective? How does the State Bank of India promote ESG performance in line with ESG policies?
Very good afternoon to Mr. UK Sinha, Shri S. Mundra, my fellow speakers, and the dignitaries. I really thank you for joining this webinar. I'm happy to be a part of this seminal initiative to recognize excellence in corporate sustainability. India is taking its rightful place on the world stage, and as a global leader, we have to lead not only on growth indicators but also sustainability indicators. And I'm sure this initiative will catalyze adoption of ESG in India. I say this based on the achievements India has made so far with respect to the Paris Agreement goals. India is among a few G20 countries who is on track to meet and possibly exceed Paris Agreement goals and has taken decisive actions to tackle climate change. To put into perspective India's achievement against goals, in August 2021, India's renewable energy capacity, excluding large hydro, crossed 100 gigawatts and is supposed to meet the target of 450 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by the year 2030. Further, against the voluntary target to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 30 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 levels, India has been able to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 21% by 2020 from 2005 levels. Indian corporates have started according due importance to managing environment and social risk, and availability of industry and peer comparisons, along with additional disclosures required under business responsibility and sustainability reporting, will help corporate identify and manage the unaddressed risk. The BRSR is applicable to the top 1,000 listed entities by market capitalization, while disclosures are required to be made from the year financial 22-23. Those volunteering to meet BRSR disclosures in 21-22, to my mind, will clearly be demonstrating intent in action when it comes to leadership practices of business responsibility and sustainability. The changing consumer preference will reshape corporate profitability, as evident already in the increasing adoption of electric vehicles. Data from SMEV reflect that EV sales have witnessed a CAGR of 63% in the 4-year period from the year 15-16 to 19-20, though on a low base. SMEV has a total of 73 members. Now compare this with SIAM, which has 40 members. Clearly that the trajectory for adoption of EVs is evident. In 5 years, we may see internal combustion engine vehicles losing market share to EVs. Single-use plastic manufacturers will also go out of business, and unless corporates have a roadmap for the net zero, their contingent liabilities will spiral out of control. This is well recognized by all countries that have ratified the Paris Accord. According to Carbon Disclosure Project, Indian companies stand to collectively lose over 7.14 lakh crore if they do not act to mitigate climate risk in the next 5 years. These risks come from physical phenomena like floods, emerging regulations, emission caps, changing customer behavior and preferences, and even potential legal issues. But if done right, opportunities worth rupees 2.9 lakh crore could emerge. India's nationally determined contribution estimates investment for meeting Paris Accord obligations as high as $170 billion per annum. So far, green finance flows in India have been 1/10 of our investment requirements. In financial year 2017, green finance inflows were only $17 billion, and in financial year 18, it increased marginally to $21 billion. During the year 2016-17 and 17-18, domestic private investors contributed the largest share, which is 63% and 51% of about INR 139,000 crores through debt and equity respectively. Commercial financial institutions accounted for 40% of these funds. Nearly all the funds were directed towards renewable energy development in the country. Public finance was disbursed either by the central government's line ministries and state departments 37%, or by dedicated public sector undertaking PSUs 63%. The bulk of public finance was directed towards the power generation sector, which is 70%, followed by energy efficiency and power transmission, that is 20%, and sustainable transportation 10%. Based on past flows of funds and assuming the same pattern continues, ESGRisk.ai estimates that banks have to fund 40% of annual NDC requirements, which means the annual demand on the banks will be $66 billion. To put this task in perspective, total credit outstanding to the power sector as on March 2021 is only $87 billion. According to a report of the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, the dependence on domestic resources for climate finance is very high, and based on the data on credit outstanding, scheduled commercial banks account for a major share. This also implies that there is a clear need to lay stress on increasing the international share of climate finance. Banks have always been the backbone of India's economic growth, and as India pivots to the sustainable growth, the banking sector will have to accelerate green lending and measure and report their own portfolio performance on the ESG. There is a growing need to sensitize India's financial sector to the importance and benefits of green finance. A formal definition of green finance in India would enable more precise tracking of finance flows to green sectors, which in turn would help design effective policy regulations and institutional mechanism directed towards increasing both public and private investment in green sectors. India's green finance definition could be formed through a combination of adopting international practices, developing a set of principles for green economic activities, and obtaining stakeholders' view. Additional steps would include disclosure of climate change risk in the financial system, directed policy and regulations to incentivize green finance, and penalties for carbon-intensive investments. Unless banks are able to provide adequate credit to green projects and measure risk in their portfolio, the bank's depositors and shareholders will continue to carry ESG risk that can erode their returns. To support acceleration in green financing, a number of structural changes will be needed in traditional lending approach, including evaluation and certification of the green credentials of each project, understanding of corporates' roadmap to achieve net zero and how projects will contribute to achievement of net zero emissions, quantifying contingent risk posed by climate change, and funding mitigation of these climate risks so that corporate can maintain the service levels and profitability, evaluating opportunities available in managing climate change and supporting corporate investments for developing new products and services that can support adoption of sustainability practices. How is SBI addressing climate-related risk? The growing importance of managing environmental and social impacts has led organizations across the world to continuously enhance their initiative to lend momentum to sustainable development. Mainstreaming environmental and social parameters into SBI's business has been a priority for the bank since long. Keeping in mind its wide reach, the bank is cognizant of the impact it may have on the environment. It has therefore taken a twofold approach towards managing its natural capital, managing the impact of its own operation, and directing its funding towards climate action by mitigating sectors through responsible investments. The bank aims to become carbon neutral by the year 2030. That's a key tenet of its climate strategy. In this regard, it has taken a number of initiatives to reduce its carbon impact, including but not limited to the installation of solar power plants, tree plantation, organic farming, and banning the use of single-use plastic on the campus. We are also in the process of identifying climate risks that have the potential to generate a substantive change in the business. The bank acknowledges the increasing risk of climate change embedded in its credit portfolio and has initiated the process of devising a framework for climate risk management in this regard. Additionally, we are also in the process of identifying and managing risk arising out of environmental, social, and governance practices and integration of ESG risk assessment in overall credit risk assessment. Policies have been put in place to increase our exposure to climate change mitigating industries, which include relaxation for extending credit facilities to borrowers in the renewable energy sector. Let me also apprise you about the bank's initiative in the area of sustainability governance. SBI has a sustainability and business responsibility policy to adopt and operate efficiently in a dynamic business landscape. The policy outlines the bank's approach to managing economic, environmental, and social performance in an integrated manner. It identifies the bank's environmental and social focus areas and outlines the general principles for the implementation of sustainability initiatives. The bank gives due consideration to environmental, social, and governance related criteria while making lending decisions to ensure that funding is directed towards the right institutions. For loans valued between Rs 5 crores and Rs 50 crore, every borrower is put through an entry-level assessment on various social and environmental criteria. For loans exceeding Rs 50 crores, borrowers are assigned scores on the basis of their performance on various ESG parameters. Over the years, bank has devised products and services to incentivize and ease the transition to environmental friendly technologies. Green Fund contribution utilized for activities like tree plantation, water conservation, sanitation, renewable energy, and waste management. Green bond, green loans. Bonds worth USD 800 millions have been issued since financial year 2018-19. A green loan worth Euro 50 million was raised in financial year 2021. Proceeds utilized in accordance with the bank's green bond framework to bring about positive environmental impact, impetus for renewable energy. Bank has put in place a renewable energy policy that incorporates various segments, namely ground-mounted solar power, wind energy, grid-connected rooftop solar power, small hydro up to 25 megawatt, and waste to energy. A number of concessions are extended, including but not limited to concessions on card rate, waiver of premium, increased tenure, and a year-long moratorium. Availability of the relevant tool sets to measure and report risk is crucial, and I'm happy ESGRisk.ai has taken the first step to provide well-researched ESG reports on Indian corporates. What is heartening to see is the level of detail and the depth of the data in ESG assessment methodology. A non-fixed, sector-specific scoring based on what is the most and the least important factor among ESG is another highlight of the methodology. For example, GHG emission reduction is considered as very high materiality for mining companies, while GHG emissions are only marginally material for real estate and financial service companies. Diversity and inclusion strategy, on the other hand, is not highly material for mining companies, but is of very high materiality for financial services and real estate companies. These tool sets are timely and will not only help banks measure the ESG risk exposure, but also help them in direct lending to sustainable corporates, increasing the green lending in their portfolio, report on their portfolio performance, meet all the regulatory requirements. I cannot stress enough on the importance of ESG for the sustainable development, and I'm happy to see initiatives being taken in India for measuring ESG performance and, more importantly, recognizing corporates that are investing in sustainability. My congratulations and best wishes to everyone involved in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting India's achievements and the relevance of ESG from the lender's perspective. It is impressive to see how SBI is addressing climate-related risks and how ESGRisk.ai tools are contributing to your efforts. Let us now zoom out and look at what is happening globally. I'm excited to be joined by Mr. Felix Sundheim, financial expert at the International Monetary Fund, Monetary and Capital Market Department. Mr. Sundheim has also researched extensively on the financial stability implications of climate change. He is going to share his views on the relevance of ESG in the capital market from a global perspective. Felix, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present here some of our findings from the recently released Chapter 3 of the Global Financial Stability Report. Before I go ahead, let me also congratulate all the winners of today's awards. Now let's move on to the chapter. If I can start with a brief motivation. So following up on the previous presentation, this chapter provides a global perspective on the role of sustainable finance, specifically investment funds, and the transition to a green economy. So we do know that the transition to a net zero greenhouse gas economy is really essential to avoid potentially catastrophic climate outcomes. And clearly there is momentum at the moment with COP26 happening later this year. We think that the financial sector has a key role to play to facilitate the transition, and specifically the investment fund sector, because it's large, it has grown a lot since the global financial crisis, and it's really at the heart of the paradigm shift towards sustainable finance. So here really, as I said, it's about the interplay between the transition to a green economy and the investment fund sector. There are, of course, also financial stability implications from this transition. And we do cover those in the report, so please have a look, but I will not cover them today in this discussion. To discuss the behavior of funds, we first have to identify what exactly constitutes a fund with a focus on sustainability. And to do that, we look at how funds describe themselves. So we go through their prospectuses and we look at their names and we label funds. In our sample, we have in total around 36,500 funds. 4,000 of those are ESG or sustainable funds. About 1,000 have a specific environmental focus, and just over 200 have a climate focus. So the overall size of the sustainable fund market and the climate funds in particular is really tiny compared to the overall market. But as you can see here, the sector is growing rapidly. Sustainable funds, environmental funds, and climate funds have all grown faster than their conventional counterparts in recent years. What we then do in the chapter is we look beyond the label at the portfolio composition of funds. And we focus on two variables here: carbon intensity and transition opportunities. Transition opportunities are constructed from Refinitiv and Morningstar data, and they reflect a company's ability to reduce environmental costs and burdens, and also company's preparedness and track record in managing carbon operations and products. Carbon intensity is our firm's greenhouse gas emissions relative to their revenues. And what we see here in these two pictures is that for advanced economies, for funds in advanced economies, both metrics have remained relatively flat. So there has not been that much progress made by portfolio firms over the past 10 years in terms of cutting emissions and becoming greener. For emerging markets, we see, however, that both metrics have been decreasing in the past few years. A word of caution is that sample issues are quite a problem here, with the number of funds being relatively small in emerging markets, and they change, the number of funds change substantially over the sample period. We then ask whether funds with a climate focus tilt their portfolios to greener firms. So we see that these funds hold indeed more securities with higher levels of transition opportunities than conventional funds. That's in the picture on the left here. So this would be in line with them actually investing in firms that support the transition. When looking specifically at the industries or the sectors that funds portfolios are invested in, we see that climate funds, so those with a specific focus on climate, they have a substantially larger exposure to firms in transition-sensitive sectors. Again, that would be consistent with these funds investing in firms that are more likely to significantly reduce their emissions in the future. So the key takeaway for us here from this slide is that climate-focused funds do indeed invest in the transition, but as we've seen in the slide before, aggregate emissions have not moved, so there needs to be done more. Then we go on and ask if fund labels are relevant for fund flows. That's an important question if we want to assess policy tools to scale up sustainable finance. As you can see here, funds with a sustainability label receive higher inflows than conventional funds, even when controlling for the actual portfolio composition of the funds. And the relevance of these labels has increased over time, as you can see here on the right-hand side. So that, to summarize, means that investors do pay attention to labels, and that underlines the potential of classification systems for making a difference. But it also underlines, of course, the importance to make sure that these classification systems actually capture meaningful information to avoid greenwashing. Then we briefly focus on two channels through which funds can influence corporate behaviors. These channels are stewardship and the supply of capital. We see that funds with an environmental or sustainability objective are more likely to vote in favor of climate-related proposals. So that's the stewardship component here on the left side. And we see that some green firms, at least, that are exposed to buying pressure from sustainable funds are more likely to issue bonds, and they issue larger volumes of bonds and equities. That's the picture on the right. So together, these two findings suggest that flows into sustainable funds can indeed help firms adopt a more climate-friendly business model. So here, then, let me conclude with a summary of the findings and some of our policy recommendations. So as I mentioned, the chapter analyzes the interplay between the transition to a green economy and the investment fund sector. We argue that the sustainable fund sector, particularly the segment dedicated to climate change mitigation, this sector could be an important driver of the transition, but that currently is too small to really make a sizable difference. Our policy recommendations are therefore the following. First, we want to stress that there is a need to urgently strengthen what we call the climate information architecture. It consists of data, of disclosure, and of sustainable finance classifications, both for firms and for funds. If this would happen, it would facilitate the pricing of risks and opportunities, it would prevent greenwashing, and would foster sustainable or climate finance markets. Once these elements are in place, one could consider then additional tools to help channel savings into sustainable funds. So this could be, for example, financial incentives for investments in climate-oriented funds. Of course, it's important to note that those tools should be seen as a complement, not as a substitute to other climate change mitigation measures, such as a carbon tax. And with this, let me just point you to the recently released report and our also recently released IMF climate note, which summarizes our thinking around strengthening the climate information architecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix, for showcasing how ESG figures in the global capital market, and where this nicely links to our next speaker, who is Mr. Sanjeev Koshek, currently posted as Additional Secretary in the Department of Financial Services and the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Mr. Koshek holds more than 27 years of experience in the financial sector, both in Indian public financial institutions as well as in global capital markets. Mr. Koshek, thank you for being here today. The floor is yours to give the sense on what policy developments are underway.
Thank you, Inga. Thanks for that introduction and for inviting me to this platform. It gives me great pleasure to be a part of these ESG Leadership Awards. I'm happy to say that this is a great platform that recognizes and encourages Indian companies for their achievements and also to share their best practice with others for others to emulate. At the very outset, let me congratulate all the winners in various categories and also to thank you, the organizers, for launching such a valuable, such a relevant platform in today's times. As you know, sustainable development is key. It is core to India's development strategy. We have taken several proactive steps in the government to mainstream sustainable development goals, the SDGs, into our policies, programs, and the schemes of various ministries. To name just a few of the prominent ones for mitigation and adaptation to meet the challenges of climate change, we have India's National Action Plan on Climate Change, the NAPCC. There is the Climate Change Action Plan, CCAP, and the National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change was set up amongst numerous other examples of such steps. One overarching initiative has been the National Mission for Green India, the GIM, which was introduced to protect, restore, and enhance India's forest cover. India is also proud to have brought the world together under the banner of the International Solar Alliance, the ISA, as you know. The ISA is the first intergovernment organization headquartered in our country, and we are proud to have them with us. As you know, our renewable energy capacity has progressed a lot over the last few years with the huge encouragement and the promotion that Government of India under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister himself has given to renewable energy efforts. Today, our renewable energy capacity is the 4th largest in the world and growing rapidly. Our per capita carbon footprint has been contained at 60%, lower than the global average. So if you look at the developed world, or even if you compare us with the emerging markets, we are looking pretty good. This is, I would attribute this because to our lifestyle, which is rooted in the traditions and traditional practices, because of which our carbon footprint is within control, within reasonable limits. As you would all appreciate, all these programs and initiatives, all the schemes that we are launching require a great deal of funding. Sustainable finance is necessary not only for government's projects, but also for some of the initiatives for which the private sector looks to the markets and to external borrowing. To ensure this, we have taken several steps and several measures to ensure that priority is given to sustainable projects as far as financing is concerned. Let me give you a few examples of how we want to achieve this. The Reserve Bank of India has included lending to social infrastructure and to clean renewable energy projects within the priority sector targets that the banks and other financial institutions have. So therefore, if banks lend to such clean and green projects, then they will their lending would be treated as priority sector lending, which is available at some concessional rates, as you are already aware. The voluntary guidelines on corporate social responsibility were issued in 2009, and these seek to mainstream the concept of business responsibility to a sustainable growth path. Some other steps that the government and regulators like SEBI have taken is, for example, SEBI has created a social stock exchange whereby the enterprises, particularly social enterprises, can raise capital from the markets, and funds, particularly the sustainable funds, can invest in responsible businesses. India today has a vibrant green bond market. And, if you compare us to China and some of the other emerging markets, we are now the 2nd largest green bond market in the world. In 2017, to give a big push to green bond issuances in India, SEBI also issued guidelines on green bonds, including listing of green bonds on the Indian stock exchanges. And today, I'm happy to tell you that there are several mutual funds, several ESG-focused funds that have listed and have been launched in the Indian markets. This gives domestic investors as well as global institutional funds an opportunity to enter the Indian markets. And I know for a fact that there is a vast amount of sustainable growth capital through the ESG funds that are waiting in the sidelines, that are waiting in the wings to enter the Indian investment avenues. Perhaps you already know that SEBI has made reporting of companies' performance on sustainability related factors as it's as important and as vital as reporting on financial and operational performances. Disclosures are now mandatory from listed companies on their performance against the 9 principles of national guidelines on responsible business conduct. The essential indicators are required to be reported on a mandatory basis, while the reporting of leadership indicators is on a voluntary basis. So these disclosures and these requirements actually not only encourage businesses to adopt and adhere to ESG standards, but also showcase some of the best practices across the Indian business for other such businesses and other companies to follow. The SDG India Index, which was designed and developed by the Niti Aayog, measures progress at the national and also at the state level as we journey towards meeting the globally accepted goals and targets for sustainable growth. To sum up, these are just a few examples of the important steps, the important reforms that the government and regulators have together taken to ensure that India is firmly progressing on the path to sustainable financing, responsible business, and green growth. Our commitment to the fight against climate change and to global warming is unwavering. Therefore, I'm really proud to be associated with these leadership awards today. You not only recognize exemplary ESG leadership, but you are also presenting role models, like I said earlier, for others to follow, for others to emulate. Once again, I would like to congratulate today's winners and also to compliment the organizers for this valuable forum, which would go a long way, I'm sure, in showcasing ESG best practices. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Koshek, for so brilliantly outlining Indian policies on ESG. I would also like to thank all our speakers. Without you, we would not have illustrated so wonderfully the relevance of ESG in capital markets. With an event slowly coming to an end, I am now excited to reveal the ESG Leadership Awards in the overall categories of environment, social and governance performance, transparency and disclosures, and the overall leadership on ESG in India. Let's start with the overall category award on environment. As we know, reducing carbon footprint, managing waste effectively, minimizing air pollution, and managing environmental impact are some of the crucial environmental management initiatives that most companies have undertaken. But one company stands out for doing more than most. The award for the best environmental practices goes to Hindustan Zinc Limited. What Hindustan Zinc Limited has achieved is indeed remarkable. They have installed renewable power generation, which now accounts for 1.73% of its energy consumption. It's among a few companies to undertake science-based targets in India and reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2 GHG emissions by 2026. 31% of the waste generated by Hindustan Zinc and nearly 40% of the water consumed by the company have been reused and recycled. All operating units of the company are equipped with environmental management systems that are ISO 14001-2004 certified. Let's put our hands together to acknowledge and celebrate Hindustan Zinc Limited's achievement on the environment initiatives, as they are the India's ESG leader in environment. Now let's go to overall leadership on the social category. Looking at social performance, we know that community services, product quality and safety, employee safety and development, equal opportunity, human rights protection are key aspects where a company can make a positive or negative social impact. The ESG leader in social impact stands out among its peers by making a positive impact on all the above areas. ESGRisk.ai's ESG leader in social impact is Axis Bank. Axis Bank has pledged to create a healthy and non-discriminatory work environment. Women comprise 24% of its workforce, showing it provides equal opportunities to all its employees. Axis Bank helps to build capacity, drives financial inclusion, empowers rural communities, and undertakes a number of community service activities through its foundation. Active leadership in consumer data confidentiality is also something that Axis Bank has taken seriously, and it has instituted a number of measures to ensure cyber security and also ensure that it complies with general data protection regulations that have been recently enacted, applicable to Europe, but Axis Bank has brought its policies to India. Let's have a round of applause for Axis Bank, India's ESG leader on social impact. In the area of governance, board independence, ethical business practices, committee functioning are some of the key parameters that ensures that a company's governance is above par. Numerous companies in India have taken a number of initiatives to improve their governance framework. But one company really stands out. May I ask for a big round of applause for Godrej Consumer Products, India's ESG leader in governance. What Godrej Consumer Products has done is differentiated itself through its policies and practices on board diversity, business ethics, instituted a number of external audits, protected shareholders' rights, instituted appropriate management compensation, and has developed management succession plans. Let's again have a round of applause for Godrej Consumer Products. Disclosures and integration of reporting standards are key to ensuring transparency to stakeholders. The award for transparency and disclosures goes to Axis Bank. Axis Bank, as our award winner, reports on both business responsibility, a reporting initiative by SEBI, and the Global Reporting Initiative Framework. Their sustainability report is based on the integrated reporting framework that is recommended by the International Integrated Reporting Council. The sustainability report of Axis Bank highlights the company's performance on almost all material risk issues. Let's again acknowledge Axis Bank's high levels of transparency. They are India's ESG leader in transparency and disclosures. Now for a final award for today, the overall ESG Leadership Award, recognizing excellence in environmental, social, and governance performance. The overall winner of today's ESG India Leadership Award is Infosys Limited. Infosys environmental initiatives include a 43.18% reduction in scope 2 emissions, a 9% reduction in freshwater consumption, certification of 34 buildings under the green building certifications, a number of employee initiatives, including employee development through self-learning courses, 25 lakh plus days of global training, 20,000 plus health checks that employees undergo voluntarily, and above average representation, nearly 38% of women in the workforce. May I request all of you to put your hands together for Infosys, India's overall ESG leader, for its commendable overall ESG performance and excellent practices in managing environment, social, and governance in India. Let me conclude